My experience with shoot-'em-up games was pretty limited when I went into ZeroRanger. Aside from a few itch.io games in the genre, I haven't properly played through a shmup in my lifetime of playing games. When I used to work for Nippon-ichi Software, I did play a bit of R-Type Final 2, but I wouldn't say I even scratched the surface in attempting to master it. Shoot-'em-ups can be a difficult genre to get into, but if you want to get into one, ZeroRanger is probably the best entry in the genre. The controls are straightforward. You move around with a joystick and have a button to fire 3 different weapons. There are 2 different ship types, and each run you do can have different weapons depending on what you pick and prefer. Later on, you'll even unlock a transformation skill in which you can switch between on a button press. Your goal is to get through a stage by blasting enemies and dodging their attacks. Managing the amount of chaos on the screen is a skill you'll master the more you play. You do this by mastering enemy attack patterns, enemy spawn timings, and other stage obstacles. In the middle of the stage, you will fight a mini-boss, and at the end of the stage, you'll fight an actual boss. If you destroy enough enemies, you'll gain a life once your score fills up. If you get hit by a projectile, you'll lose a life. Lose all your lives and it's game over. You'll be thrown back to the title screen. However, here's where ZeroRanger differentiates itself. Each time you get a game over, your highest score will fill in an orb on this lotus. These orbs are extra continues for your next playthrough. So through failure, you'll gain more and more continues to make it further and further into the game each time. This continue system is ZeroRanger's biggest strength, as even players who have trouble getting through stages are always encouraged to keep trying. Getting through a stage even lets you continue from that stage if you get to it. Personally, I always enjoyed starting from the very beginning because I wanted to see how much of the game I could master. There's even incentive to start from the beginning because that's a potentially higher score you can get to fill in the lotus for an extra continue. Don't get me wrong, you will die a lot playing this game. Even though the game is less than an hour long, it took me 5 hours to get to the final stage of the game, and another hour to beat the so-called final boss. Hopefully, by the time you get to the final boss and beat it, you'll have mastered each and every stage, enemy, and boss. In that sense, your goal is to become ZeroRanger, an absolute master at this game. The one area I'm on the fence about is at the very end of the game. Once you've finally beaten the final boss, you're given a choice: continue or give up. The catch is, if you continue and fail, your save data gets wiped. This is a very extreme thing to do, but it ties in with the game's lore and themes incredibly well. Achieving the true ending is a reward for those willing to achieve that ZeroRanger level of mastery. However, I can't help but feel the execution of this is way too extreme. First off, I have a hard time believing that anyone who doesn't know what they're getting into will beat that final segment, because they don't know what to expect. Practice makes perfect, and it's something that the game has been pushing and rewarding you to do, so suddenly shifting that idea to its absolute extreme doesn't land well. The final blow to this is the story. Players who don't complete this will be left in the dark about what's actually going on in the game. So if you're narratively invested, you could most likely end up being frustrated knowing you won't get to see the conclusion or even a chance at it until you replay the entire game again. Now, there are some crafty ways to circumvent the save wipe, like backing up your save data. However, I'd like to respect the developer's design choice here. Given that this hasn't been patched or changed, it does seem to be the intended way the developers wanted this final segment to play out. I do have respect for this decision, even if I don't personally like it. I also feel that maybe System Erasure knew how bad this could feel to players, because it seems like something they fixed with Void Stranger. Most endings in Void Stranger push you to play the game again, but there are points that leave you very satisfied with the experience and give you a good stopping point. Combine this with the brand system, and you get the sense that System Erasure learned their lesson about what constitutes properly rewarding players for their long-term investment in a game. Here's a spoiler for you: I haven't actually beaten that final segment of ZeroRanger. I felt discouraged when my save data was erased, but surprisingly, I did want to pick the game back up again in the future. I'll get to beating that final segment one day because the journey there is insanely fun and rewarding. ZeroRanger is an incredibly replayable experience and is definitely a game to try if you're new to the shmup genre or a longtime fan of it. Regardless, if you do end up trying it out, all I can say is, may you attain enlightenment.